Maybe you don't believe me. Maybe you don't think we should take it that seriously. Maybe you don't think we should take that passage literally. We should understand it to mean something slightly better. But 1 John 1 verse 8 says that if anyone says that they have no sin, they are a liar. Anyone here going to say, you want to stand up and say, I have no sin? Anyone want to say, I have never done an evil deed? John the Apostle says that even to stand up and say that would be an evil deed. Because it would be a deceitful thing to say, a lie. Maybe I can press the point by showing you some specifics about the evil deeds that these Colossian Christians used to walk in. We dealt with this passage last Lord's Day. It's an ugly passage, verse 5 to 8 of chapter 3. Notice in verse 7, Paul says, in these you too once walked. This is the description of these Christians' lives before they were saved. Verse 5, sexual immorality, breaking the seventh commandment. Impurity, passion, evil desire, and covetousness, breaking the 10th commandment, which is idolatry, breaking the first and second commandments. Now you must put them all away. Verse 8, anger. Our Lord Jesus says that anger is a breach of the commandment not to murder, not to kill, because it is murder conceived in the heart. So breaking the sixth commandment. Wrath, malice, slander. Remember, that's the word blasphemy. Breaking the third commandment. Obscene talk or abusive speech from your mouth. Do not lie to one another. I'm going to mess up the number here. I think it's the 9th commandment. Right? 8 out of 10 commandments listed here as a description of the comprehensive wickedness of your life before you became a Christian. So will you stand up looking at that list and say, you cannot accuse me of any of these evil deeds. I have not broken God's law. I am righteous. I do not need forgiveness. But it gets worse. Because one way that we can treat sin lightly is to treat it just as a breach of a law somewhere. You ever find that habit at work to you, that you broke a policy? You didn't know you'd broken a policy? I used to work at a financial institution as a lender. I got to give people my employer's money. And they have a lot of policies. Some of them are very long and complicated. Some of them are very detailed. I was pretty new. And sometimes I gave people money contrary to policy. And, it wasn't that big of a deal. They said, next time, just remember that we have this policy. We don't do this, or we do this, right? So should we treat sin that way? Just a breach of policy. God has some rules somewhere, section 318F, number 2, and I accidentally happen to not know that regulation. Is that a sin? No, it's much worse than that. And one way to see how much worse it is to turn to chapter 2 of Colossians, verse 13 and 14. You who were dead in your trespasses. The word trespass there is the idea of a specific violation or debt. And the uncircumcision of your flesh, God made alive together with him, having forgiven us all our trespasses. There's that word again. Not just that a law was broken, but that a specific sense of violation or indebtedness has been incurred. Verse 14 speaks about a record of debt that stood against us with its legal demands. So let me put it to you this way. What if my employer had a rule that said every time I gave money to somebody contrary to policy, it came from my wages? And I did a loan for somebody, as I sometimes did, for maybe $20,000. And it broke policy. And all of a sudden now I'm $20,000 in debt to my employer. Do you see how you probably wouldn't laugh that off the same way? The sense of obligation, and even more the sense of personal conflict involved in this. It's one thing to have broken some law somewhere, but to be in debt to someone is a very serious state of affairs. And God says that your sin, your evil issue of you needing some sort of legal protection from some arcane principle stuck in a handbook of government law somewhere. Is that you personally have violated God's instructions for your life and directly lived in conflict with Him so that you are now personally in His debt. I'd say that's a much more serious state of affairs than we usually think of. And not only that, but look at chapter 1, verse 21. I mentioned this already in the sense of doing evil deeds, but look at what happens when you do evil deeds. You who once were alienated and hostile in mind. In other words, sin is not just a breach of a law or a policy. It is not just incurring a debt. It is an act and declaration of war so that your relationship with the Lord is now ruined and destroyed. And I mean, it's very easy to illustrate this from everyday life, isn't it? You can be getting along very famously with somebody until they ask you for money. Ever happened to you? You like them, you enjoy their friendship and their company. They need a bit of help, you give them $500. And you say, well, repay me when you get a chance. Maybe in the next few months. Give me a shout when you've got the ability to repay. And they never talk to you again. You ever been there? I've been there once. It hurt. It hurt. Because I gave them a little tiny bit of money in good faith. I mean, if they really hadn't been willing to repay, I probably would have said, I'd rather just be your friend. Let's not talk about it anymore. Not a big deal. But their relationship with me was ruined. Might as well have been at war with me. No more contact, no more communication, no more friendship. Because they owed me that little bit more. How much worse to owe the God who created you? How much worse to be in deep, dark debt to the God who rules this world as a sovereign king? That's our need of forgiveness. And notice how urgent the situation gets. Turn back to chapter 2:13. You were unhappy in your trespasses. Is that the problem? You were guilty? Is that the problem? You were not realizing your potential? Is that the problem of sin? No, the problem is you were dead. See, if you're living without God's forgiveness, if you're living a life of doing evil deeds, breaking His law, incurring debt to Him, and making war against Him, your life is a life that would better be described as death. Because as sure